CF, we're continuing our journey where we're just kind of looking at these passages that urge us to just take some action, be this, do that. We're back in 1 Peter, and I'm going to take you in two passages in 1 Peter today. The first one is chapter 4, verse 7. Here's the Apostle Peter, nearing the end of his life, about to be martyred by Nero ultimately. He says, "The end of all things is near. Therefore, be alert and sober-minded, so that you may pray." Now, we'll come back to that thought in a minute. So he says, you've got to be alert, you've got to be sober-minded, so that you may pray. Chapter 5, verse 8. He's going to repeat the two thoughts. Be alert and sober-minded, but this time it's not to pray. He says, your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. What was Peter getting at? He says, first of all, he says, you got to stay alert and sober-minded, and let's talk about what that means. Alert means that I have a spiritual given or a God-given awareness of myself, a God-given elevated awareness of other people, a God-given elevated awareness of circumstances occurring around me. I'm seeing things from more and more God's point of view, myself, others, occurring events. So I've got to be alert and sober-minded. I'm thinking with an objectivity. I'm thinking clearly. I'm not just purely driven by emotion. I'm not full of just giddy, silly, stupid thoughts. I'm looking at things with a seriousness. This doesn't preclude that we're going to have times of humor and so forth, but it just means that my mind is in a good condition to function the way God intended it to. My reasoning faculties, they're fired up, they're attuned. They've got objectivity. They're not biased by my desires or my emotions or my weaknesses. My conscience has been calibrated carefully and is being continually calibrated to God's Word and not just societal norms and standards. So I'm in this alerted and I'm in this sober-minded position. But Peter says, first of all, you got to stay in that way where your God-enlightened reasoning faculties and conscience are governing your emotions in your body and so forth, so that, he says, you can pray. Now, this just sounds odd. Why might Peter bring that up? Well, maybe you can recall that the night that Jesus was betrayed, before he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, he tells his disciples, hey guys, I want you to come with me. I'm going to step aside and I'm going to pray. And, Jesus is preparing himself for what he knew what was coming. Told his disciples already that he was going to be betrayed, he was going to be crucified and so forth. And he tells his disciples, though, he says, watch and pray with me that you won't enter yourself into temptation. So Jesus prays and he comes back after a bit and he finds his disciples, Peter being one, asleep. He wakes them up and he says, hey guys, watch and pray that you enter not in temptation. He goes away again. He comes back a second time, they're asleep. Does it a third time, they're asleep. And this time he says, it's too late because here comes the Roman guards along with the Jewish guards to arrest him. And so it went. So Peter, here he is now. It's, some 30 more years later, and he's remembering how ill-equipped he was for the changing set of circumstances that were going to occur because he had not listened to what Jesus said. That time of prayer would have stabilized him inwardly, would have given him clarity, would have given him objectivity, so that when the arrest came, the words of Jesus that had been given to Peter previously about, hey, Peter, tonight, man, you're going to deny me 3 times, they would have been ringing in his head, as would have Jesus saying that he was actually going to be crucified. Then Peter picks up the same theme from chapter 4:7 to chapter 5:8. He says, be sober, be vigilant, sober-minded and alert, and so forth. Why? Your enemy, the devil, prowls around looking for someone who he can devour. Well, Peter is thinking about his own denials because he did not watch and pray. He was not inwardly strengthened. He was not spiritually strengthened. So he gave way to emotions and what we would call the old self or the flesh. The old self or flesh was more devoted to seeing what was Jesus going to do, what's going to happen. I want to watch. If I have to lie and tell people I don't know Jesus, if I have to deny him 3 times, so what? I'm fixated on seeing what's going to happen because I believe Peter thought that Jesus was still going to become that Messiah of power at that time, use his supernatural ability to overthrow the Roman rule and so forth. And so Peter's watching, but if he had to lie along the way, he was going to do that because he was not in an inwardly strengthened condition that would allow him to remain principle governed instead of kind of situational ethics, for want of a better term. So he's bringing this back up. He's saying, the devil's always watching, and if he can catch you at a weak moment, he will make you and the Lord you serve look like a fool. Peter was brought to a place of denial. Peter was supposed to be the number one apostle, that he's the head in all the lists. He's Jesus' chosen leader. He's the one that Jesus said to, you're the rock, and you're the one that recognized me first as the Messiah. I'm going to build my church on your testimony. So to dethrone someone like Peter, to cut his legs out from under him, it could have been very detrimental to the whole work of God. Now, John 21, Jesus restores Peter, and hence he lives on for some 35 years, really, faithful in his service to Jesus. But Peter remembers that even those that have been in intense, close relationship with Christ still need to be alert, still need to be vigilant, because we can lose that spiritual strength, and we can then fall prey to all kinds of temptations that would deny the Lord and hurt the cause of Christ. Hope this doesn't apply to anybody today, but we all need to hear it. Thank you.